So I have to start with a fun video of myself and my daughters. We are doing kickboxing. We all have a trainer named Tony. Isn't that perfect? Tony the trainer. We've been doing kickboxing for a little over a year. My daughter's a little longer than me. You can be able to tell that they know much more about what they're doing. I will say the very first few, it's only 23 seconds, first of all, so definitely not going to bore you. But the very first moments, I'm like doing the speed back, and I am jamming, and my trainer who did the video, he swears that he'd not speed that up. I don't know if I just had like a moment of, I don't know what it is. But anyway, why don't we do the video? I'm impressed. So why am I sharing that totally random video? Well, if we were to go into a boxing ring and we only knew a right cross and a left jab, that wouldn't be very smart, huh? And we would need to know all of the different moves. We'd need to know elbows and kicks and hooks and everything that we need to know all of it if we're going to beat that foe in the boxing ring. And there's nothing worse. There's no depression and anxiety are way up there as far as formidable foes. And I'm going to kind of lump them together because 70% of the time they go together. So, and what helps one helps the other. And I am a depression and anxiety expert, like serious expert. Like you may never meet someone that's such an expert because, not because I've been licensed for 25 years, that's helped some, but because I, for 2 years, struggled with depression, mostly depression and definitely some anxiety. And I could sit here and talk about how bad it was, but it was bad. And it took a very long time. And I could talk about all the symptoms and the best way I can describe depression, I tried to figure this out later. To me, it felt like this sinking feeling all the time. And I do remember waking up one morning, telling my husband, I said, I don't think I can do this. I can't do this any longer. So every day felt like I can't barely do this any longer. And so anyway, I learned through personal experience that, and I was able to come out of it through attacking it from multiple angles. Like a lot of different angles. Like we're going to go over 18 different angles that you, and I don't want to overwhelm people. I'm just saying, and a lot of things are like lifestyle things we'll go over. But like you have to attack this from multiple angles. And there's not just two things that help. So first of all, I'm going to have Shu come up, and we're going to do some audience participation. You don't have to kickbox, but I would like people to raise their hand and say one thing that has helped them or someone close to them. So personal knowledge of something that has worked as far as like one angle or approach that has worked as far as helping with depression and anxiety.
Reaching out for support, people who care about.
Okay, so support and social connection. Okay.
Journaling my feelings.
Great. Journaling feelings. Great. Awesome. Exercise. Have you been looking at my notes?
Along with exercise,
Breathing exercises. I may not even mention some of these, but we just did. No. Supplements and nutrition.
Just sleeping enough.
Sleeping enough? Getting enough sleep? Okay. Great. Prayer.
I like a color, actually.
Color?
Coloring.
And that's one of my clients. She has an adult coloring book and loves it. Anybody else? Singing. Gratitude. You know, that's a great reminder. Gratitude. Writing out, or naming everything you're thankful for. You hold on one second. I'm not going to probably mention that again. I mean, I may not go over gratitude, or I don't. Anyway, I'll just stop right now. It is so fun to think of the most random things you can think about. I did that. Actually, that I should have that in this talk because at one point I did that a lot, and it did help. But I would thank God for hair on my arms. I know there's a purpose. Anyway, or whatever. Thank you that we have toes to keep us balanced. You know, whatever it is. So you can have fun with gratitude too. But it does help your attitude for sure. An attitude of gratitude. Who else? I had to say that.
Balance with the schedule.
Balance
schedule.
What about a schedule?
Keep the schedule balanced.
Okay, a balanced schedule or a schedule at all? Okay. Yes.
Helping or blessing others?
Yes, helping others. Somebody else is cheating. We'll look at my notes. Oh, wait.
Like read or memorize promise scriptures.
Read or memorize promised scriptures. Great. Walk, and with a friend is even double whammy.
Everyone seems to be skirting medication.
Medication, huge. Therapy. Anybody else? Support groups, peer groups? Yeah, great. Okay, is that good? That's a lot. Should we count those? Let's count them. 18. Okay. We'll see if it matches my 18. Probably not exactly, but that's great. Thank you so much. Yay. Okay, I'm just going to read these out, and then we're going to touch on 18 that I have, but we'll expound on 3 or 4 of them. So, reaching out, journaling feelings, exercising, breathing exercises, supplements/nutrition, enough sleep, praying, therapy, support groups, singing, gratitude, balanced schedule, helping others, reading scripture, walking, and particularly walking with friends, and medication. Great. It's a pretty thorough list. I'm just going to briefly mention some of these. Talk therapy. So depression, anxiety usually has relational and psychological roots, and sometimes we need a safe place to be heard, someone that's unbiased and knows how to listen. I remember when I decided to be a therapist, I met with a counselor in college, and I went away and said, I'm going to do that because there's nothing better than someone who knows how to listen and someone who has answers, because it's just so rare to run across someone that actually knows how to listen. It's not that easy, even for therapists, to really listen. So I myself went to intensive therapy for 2 years, and it was a lifesaver for me. It's kind of like I wasn't functioning, and so I just had to go and just talk and cry, and so I was able to wind it down towards the end of 2 years. So, medicine. Sometimes, medicine, I think we should look at medicine, especially for people struggling with anxiety, depression, perhaps, definitely bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, all different ones, like a diabetic needing insulin. And the speaker, Brad, mentioned that with something like bipolar, you pretty much will probably need to be on medication and schizophrenia for your entire life. And that's important. It's like you need your insulin, you know. I, at one point, was on 4 different medications, and they saved my life. And that's what I had to do. So I'm not at all opposed to medication, at all, obviously. We all need to, if we're depressed and anxious, or we know someone, or one of our kids, or need a medical checkup and blood tests. We want to make sure there's nothing underlying, oh wait, I'm sorry. Can we pass the notes out? I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you guys. I swore that I was going to tell you, and I forgot. We all need we need to make sure that there's nothing underlying, like a thyroid issue or something like that, that's one of the root causes. Let's see. Okay, so the next one I want to touch on a little bit more extensively is our relationship with God. When we or a loved one is in excruciating pain, it's common to wonder if God cares, or is God even, I should probably wait till those go, to wonder if God is even there. So, I mean, this is a wild statement, but I have been a believer since 4th grade, which is 47 years, which, if you are good at math, is like I'm 57. So it's amazing to be able to say I've been a Christian for 47 years. But my faith greatly suffered because of the depression, and it's still recovering. So I think we have in the back of our mind, a lot of us, that God's going to bless us and everything's going to be okay, you know, and that I think it's a very limited view, because we can look around and everything's not okay with lots of Christians, but I think I had in the back of my mind everything was going to be good and God was going to bless me, and well, that's not necessarily how things work. But one thing that he said to my heart, I didn't really hear him much. I didn't feel close to him at all for those 2 years. But he said one day, and I remember telling my husband this, he said, I am not going to waste one drop of your suffering. And that I'm going to use every single bit of it to love other people. So I'm like, good, because I have to have hope, and I have to have some kind of hope. So just some books just to help build our faith that God is even there. One is The God Conversation by J.P. Moreland and Tim Muehlhoff. One that I read when I was younger, and I'm rereading. I just love it, and it's been revised by his son, is More Than a Carpenter by Josh and Sean McDowell. And then another great book is the Bible in a little bit different form, almost like a novel form, but it is New Living Translation. It's called Immerse, and it just kind of strikes you in different ways. Our Bible study's doing that. Another great tool is by a man named Larry Warner and Jeannie, no idea how to pronounce her last name, but did a workbook called Imaginative Prayer. And you guys have a handout called the Come to Jesus exercise, just as an example. We're not looking at that right now, but that's a wonderful tool. It says youth ministry, but we're all like kids at heart. So, another area is getting intercessory prayer, another angle from which to attack depression, and addressing spiritual warfare. Make no mistake that Satan definitely wants us all to be depressed, all to be anxious, all to be debilitated, So there is going to be a spiritual warfare element that we need to make sure and look at. And most, it's not that, I know you guys probably know that. But when it comes to spiritual warfare, it's what I've learned through the years. It's all about authority structures. So you can read more about that, but spiritual forces are bound by authority structures. So if you understand your authority, the authority you have in Christ and the authority that Christ has, then you can make a lot of headway in, addressing lies, vows, strongholds. And there is a prayer, a spiritual warfare prayer in your packet as well. And that's adapted from a few different sources. I like to adapt things, so a lot of adapting. I think someone mentioned, did anybody mention thoughts? I don't know if they mentioned thoughts. Anyway, we do need to manage our thoughts. And the goal is not necessarily positive. So you have this handout as well. Not necessarily positive thoughts, but balanced thoughts. And this is, again, a form I adapted from a workbook called Mind Over Mood. And all these resources are repeated again at the end of your packet, by the way. Mind Over Mood and the Feeling Good Handbook. So it's kind of an adaptation. It's really cool, though. You start with a negative thought. First of all, you start with what's your emotions, and you circle those, and you put percent. Like, I'm depressed 70% or whatever. And then about this, you start with an event. My best friend was kind of a jerk to me or whatever. So you put that in there. And then you say, depressed, I'm 70% depressed about that or whatever. And then you just circle all your feelings. And then you go through your negative thoughts. And you say, she's getting impatient, she's tired of me. Or, you just go through and list different thoughts about the situation and about her and about you, for instance. And then you go through and you try to nab yourself to figure out what distortions you have. So it's interesting. Certain distortions make us feel more anxious if we tend to think in those ways, and certain cognitive distortions make us feel more depressed. Things like self-blame would make us feel more depressed. Maybe discounting the positives. It just depends on the different ones. But you try to nab yourself and say, if I'm thinking that about my friend, maybe I'm doing all or nothing thinking. Or maybe I'm mentally filtering out the good things or whatever. And then you want to come, if you really want to use this, it is a cool thing, but you do evidence supporting, which means that you imagine a lawyer standing up and saying, this is the evidence that your friend is tired of you, whatever. And then you imagine another lawyer stand up and say, this is the evidence that she loves you very deeply. And then you come up with a balanced thought, and that is, my friend may be a little bit tired of me because I talk all the time, but that's a joke, but no, sort of not. but she also has told me over and over again that I'm the most special person to her in the world, whatever. So that's the balanced thought. So it's kind of like, yes, but. And then you can go through and you could rate, how much you believe that. So there's also, I mentioned feelinggood.com. There's this new, it says Davis. Oops, it's David Burns. Or yours might say David. This new therapy called team therapy. TEAM. I am not familiar with it. One of my good friends just told me they really was impressed by it. That's all about on their feelinggood.com website. A lot of people like Mindspace app on their phone. Anybody ever done that? The Mindspace app? No? It's like I think it just helps you with your thinking. And anyway, that's another resource. Lots of resources today, but we need those. So, someone mentioned the power of doing good. So there's a book called The Healing Power of Doing Good. And the findings of the book say that weekly volunteering or helping with those other than your, and which means helping with those other than your family and friends, is life-changing for not only your mental health and happiness level and your mood, but also your physical health. It's life-changing for your physical health, helping other people. Another thing that's good is setting and reaching goals. Depression seems to have a lot of its roots in low self-esteem. And so anytime you set and reach a goal, even a little one, it helps you feel better about yourself. Anxiety has a lot of its roots in feeling helpless. So again, anytime you set and reach a goal, you feel less helpless, a little stronger. So setting and reaching goals is good for depression and anxiety. Another thing is learning something new. Learning something new kind of breathes life into us. It makes us feel young. I took an entire EMDR training course. You know, it was a major deal, cost me big bucks. But it was so good. It just made me feel so, I just was learning so much, and I had something different to focus on and grow in, and I'll talk more about EMDR later, but it was just really good for me professionally, personally, really was good for my own journey through depression and anxiety. It's really good for us to try to learn something new. I'm mentioning all this stuff, but the last thing I want to do is overwhelm people or overwhelm your friends if you share this with people that need it. The main thing is doing what little bit you can do. I mean, my routine was I would wake up very late. I would go to this volunteer organization. I'd go to this organization called 31 Bits that makes jewelry for ladies in Africa. It's a nonprofit. I would go and put jewels in a bag for hours. But I was around people and there was some structure. I would go to Pete's Coffee and just to be around people. And then I would go to the grocery store every day and shop for, it was just something it was what I could do, and it was all I could do was those three things. And then I would walk with a friend almost every day. And so I just had to do what little bit I could do. Maybe that sounds like a lot, but it wasn't much. It was just what I could muster. And that was a little further along that I could even do those things. For a while, I was just catatonic. I couldn't do anything. Music. We don't have a slide for music. Anyway, so this has been brand new as far as me learning about music. The first time I was the healing power of music, first time I was exposed to it, was from a man named Dan Allender, Dr. Dan Allender. He's actually a specialist with sexual abuse. He wrote Healing the Wounded Heart. He was actually one of my major professors at my Master's of Biblical Counseling. But he talks about how music positively affects two major parts of the brain. One is the amygdala. Don't know where that is, but one's the amygdala, and that's the flight or fight center of the brain. And the other's the hippocampus. And the hippocampus, I believe, is more in the frontal lobe. But the job of the hippocampus is to calm down the amygdala, the fight or flight area. And trauma makes the hippocampus shrink. And music helps the hippocampus grow, literally grow. And so therefore, hippocampus is able to more do its job as far as calming down and soothing the amygdala, the fight or flight part of the brain. And also, one researcher that I read said, Dr. Allender said that music also makes the amygdala dance. So that was interesting. Anyway, so I saw another great TED Talk recently. These TED Talks are great because I have ADD, so my attention span is definitely not longer than 18 minutes. They have to be 18 minutes long. TED, TED, which stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. So Google TED Talk by Alan Harvey. He's got a great accent. He's from Perth. He sings to you and everything. It's great. It's called Your Brain on Music. Then there's a veteran that used music to heal himself from PTSD, and that's music therapy for PTSD. You can get your hormones tested with blood tests. It doesn't show a lot, but if you go to a place that does urine testing, it reveals a lot more. My younger daughter had triple the estrogen that she's supposed to have, 300% more than she's supposed to have or something. And so the nutritionist, the person did this whole liver cleanse thing with her and gave her these DIM supplements, DIM, which should be the notes, really good for people to balance out their hormones. Actually, it's a supplement that's derived from like cauliflower and broccoli, and that's one way I could get my vegetables. All those cruciferous vegetables. But it's supposed it really balances out your hormones. And just those things, along with a probiotic, were able to bring her estrogen level all the way to normal, and so she didn't have those terrible symptoms. So if you think you might have hormone issues, you might want to go to a place that actually does the urine testing. Make sure your insurance is paying for all these, at least all the blood tests. They don't pay for the urine tests. Anyway, I don't know if you guys have, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of MTHFR. Anybody? No? It's a genetic defect. I have it on both of my parents' sides. It impedes your ability to detoxify your cells. And so that's actually influences a lot of diseases, and it can mess with your and depression. It can affect a lot of different things. So that's something that I actually have to take special B vitamins with that. And there's a man named Dr. Ben Lynch. His organization's called Seeking Health. They're not your regular B vitamins, definitely not folic acid. It's special B vitamins. But if you guys ever heard of 23andMe, you can do that and find out if you have that genetic defect or the Alzheimer gene or all those things. And that you probably need a special doctor to work through with that. And you might be able to find one through Dr. Ben Lynch's website. But that's an issue that some people have. My sister swears by TMS. I've never had TMS, but she thinks it's great. I had a client that didn't benefit from it, but it has major, it's transcranial magnetic stimulation. So I think they put like these electrodes on you or something. It's supposed to be, the statistics are that it's very helpful. So ECT, electrical current therapy, that is a very extreme way to go, but if it's like your life or death, or like if there's nowhere else to go, that can be very effective. You can lose an entire year or two of your memory, but sometimes those extreme measures have to be taken. So you do what you got to do. I did exercise. Someone mentioned exercise. So about a year into depression, the depression I was dealing with. I try not to say my depression because it kind of owns it. It's probably better to say the depression that I was going through, or the anxiety. I picked up this book, Anxiety and Depression Boot Camp, and I read it, and the statistics in it made me so motivated to exercise that I started going to the Y like 3 or 4 times a week, and it made a huge difference. So I can't say enough about exercise and how huge it is. There's a woman named Wendy Suzuki, and she wrote Healthy Brain, Healthy Life. I just got to know her through the TED Talks, and she is so fun and so energetic, and she was like a researcher who never left her chair, and she ended up gaining all kinds of weight because she never moved from her computer. And then she started exercising, lost 25 pounds, and now she switched all her research over to talking about the brain and exercise and how good it is for you, not only your mood, but your health, your memory. She just can't say enough about it. Why don't everybody stand up? So, without hitting people around you, everybody just go like this. And Wendy, I'm going to stretch a little bit. Wendy talks about exercise that not only is aerobic, but also uses positive language, like positive statements. And that actually makes sense how effective it is. But it actually makes sense because I went through a short bout of depression right after college. I started exercising, and I was also reading the Power of Positive Thinking books. Don't sit down yet. If you can, don't sit down yet. If you can stay standing. I was reading all these like Robert Schuller books and stuff, and it was really effective. So I was kind of doing what Wendy does. I'm like power of positive thinking or positive statements and exercising at the same time, and I pulled out of it that time in a month. So that would have been nice if that had happened last time. But anyway, so I didn't even plan to do this, but this is what Wendy does. I really want you to see this. Wendy Suzuki, I really want you to see her TED Talk. So maybe this will motivate you. So do like this, and then say, I am strong now. I am strong now. And that's good. She does it with a lot more like enthusiasm. But anyway, about exercise, my kickboxing instructor, he has a whole classes that he does called NeuroFit. You guys may have heard about this. It's for Parkinson's patients. And so he'll have people come on walkers, and then after a few months, they'll be walking on their own. So, I mean, it really, strenuous exercise and regular exercise really helps every part of our body. Can't say enough about it. And with exercise, it's important to do what you can. You may want to start with 10 minutes of aerobic exercise, walking or treadmill or whatever, and then the next day do 12 minutes, and the next day you have this in your notes too, the exercise mood log, and just keep going until you get to about 30 minutes, ideally 3 or 4 times a week. That's what Wendy says. Wendy, my new favorite person. And she mentioned like keeping track. My husband's so cool. He made this for me last night. So she mentioned keeping track of how you feel. So if you want to look at this, it says you put the date down and the mood, your mood, like depressed mood or down mood, 0 to 10 before you start, and then after. Just right after your workout. I started at a 2 and now I'm a 3. And then you will do the same thing with stress or anxiety. Start with, okay, I had a 9 on my stress level and now I'm feeling at a 7. And you just do that for every day and just see. And she's saying that the more sort of down you are, depressed or anxious, the more benefits you're going to see like quicker as far as your mood. And there's just lots of research that says every time, and a lot of it is in the book, Depression Boot Camp, and then he revised it to Freedom from Depression and Anxiety, which I like the boot camp. It's more catchy. But that's Dr. Mike Marino. So a lot of it, it's all about, as far as depression goes, it's all about trying to figure out what I would enjoy. That's why I started doing kick. I kind of waned off on the going to the gym. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe I can do kickboxing like my girls do. So I went to the trainer and I said, I think we can work together because you work with Parkinson's patients, and I'm like not that much like more fit. And so I'm like I don't know, I'm not very good shape. So anyway, so I kind of had a gap of a while in between when I was going to the Y and when I started kickboxing, so I got out of shape. And I'm 57, almost 58. And so he's like, oh yeah, I can work with you for sure. You know, I can go down to your level. So anyway, this I encourage you guys to actually take copies of this and use this exercise mood log and do like experiment and see if it makes a huge difference. It made a huge difference with me as far as helping with the depression and anxiety I was going through. Walking is always great. Someone mentioned that. This is random. There's a therapist in Hampstead Heath, England, called the Walking Therapist. And the therapist takes their clients out on walks. I actually did that with my clients. They just have to go with whatever I'm experimenting with at the time. They show up, I'm like, okay, we're going to take a walk around the parking lot. So I actually did that with them for a while. It was kind of fun. We kind of, whatever. They actually enjoyed it. I probably need to bring it back every now and then. Her name is Laura Just, and she's refers to as the walking therapist. This is just a freebie, but men open up more if you're parallel to them. I don't even know where I got this, but and women can open up any way you face probably, but that is interesting. If you want your teenage son to open up to you, go on a walk or go on a drive with him. But I think walking helps a lot of people open up, and that's why one of the reasons why a therapist likes it. That therapist is also trying to help them live in the present and enjoy God's creation. I don't say God's creation, but enjoy nature. I like God's creation better. But anyway, so go for it. Walk, run, everything. Now is the time. So I'm trying to, we're going to pass out these, maybe both of you guys, or he can help too. Steve, right? Steve. We're going to pass out these. These are Yummy Bear Organics, Complete Multiple. Allergen-free, gluten-free, everything free. So it's not going to hurt you. I'm doing this because I want you guys to remember the statement, not music, another M, movement is good medicine. So these little gummy bears stand for medicine. Good medicine. So I'm just trying to appeal to your senses, and our memory is attached to our senses. Maybe you should smell the little gummy bear. No, I'm kidding. That any kind of movement is one of the very best medicines for depression and anxiety. So have fun doing some of that, looking into some of that. It's really exciting. Now, this is one I had never heard. Someone may have. Did anybody talk about doing things with your hands or hobbies or what? Coloring. That was definitely along these lines. So this is really cool. This is one of the most exciting things about this, what I'm sharing. So for some reason, well, there is a reason. Doing productive things with our hands, I did this. Doing productive things with our hands has huge positive effects on our mood, because every time we perform a task and sets something in motion, it sets in motion something called the effort-driven rewards circuit. It's 3 parts of our brain that are connected to each other. The names are too hard for me to pronounce, but every time we do crafts, we do gardening, we do cooking, knitting, painting, woodwork, ceramics. Every time we do anything productive with our hands is very therapeutic, is very good for our mood. And the reason why is Dr. Kelly Lambert. She wrote this book called Lifting Depression. And the reason why she wanted to get into this is because she's like, why is it that 30 or 40 years ago people weren't near as depressed, and they went through like war all the time, whatever. So why is that? And why are we so depressed and we have it in some ways so easy? And she figured out that's the crux of it, is because instead of cooking our food, we pick up our food. Instead of mending our clothes, we go to the tailor. Instead of gardening, we get somebody to mow our grass, or we don't do anything for ourselves. And as a result, it makes us feel less excited, it affects our self-esteem in the sense that there's nothing we're doing that we're proud of, that we can look at and say, look what I do, look what I did. I have a friend who's a roofer, and he has his own company, and he said, I will never, no matter how big my company gets, I will never not do roofing every day, because I can look back and go, every day I go, whoa, look what I did. I did a whole half of a roof today or whatever. And that just kind of drove it home for me, because of talking to people. And it's wild. I was like in the grocery store last week. Of course, I was talking to that person. I talked to everybody. But the gal said, the thing that helps me when I'm depressed is ceramics. I'm like, you got it. Does anybody resonate with that when you do things with your hands, it makes you feel better about yourself, better coloring? And yeah, and it's something we don't hear about. And I just am so blessed that I hit upon this gal, Dr. Kelly Lambert, and she's got some great talks online, and there's one that I listed. It's very, very exciting. But how much longer do I have? 10 minutes. Okay, great. Sorry, Mike. But let me just quickly tell you about her research. She works with rats. She's a behavioral neuroscientist. She has PhD students that were helping her. They had 2 groups of rats. One group they call the worker rats, and the other group they call the trust fund babies. And the worker rats, rats love Fruit Loops for some reason. So the worker rats, they put Fruit Loops in under mounds of debris all over their cage. And for 6 weeks, for 10 minutes a day, for 6 weeks, the worker rats had to dig for the Fruit Loops. And then the other rats, the trust fund babies, just got Fruit Loops stuck around in their cages. Well, after the 6 weeks, they gave the rats these little balls, and the little cat balls with Fruit Loops inside of them, and they couldn't get to them. The worker rats worked 60% longer to try to get to the Fruit Loops. They jumped on them, they threw them around, whatever they did, rolled them around. They wouldn't give up. They tried to stick their little paws in there, but they couldn't get. And the other ones were like, whatever. Somebody's going to give them to me in a minute anyway. And so then they tested their stress hormones, and they found out the trust fund babies were far more stressed out than the worker rats. Go figure. When we can do things for ourselves, we feel a lot less powerless, a lot less helpless. When we can fix our own car, we can make our own meals, or we can grow our own food. My husband's like has this whole 12-inch gardening thing going. We're like eating his vegetables. It's amazing. Anyway, it's just really cool. So, and when you can add creativity to here's my blog, or parts of my blog. It's called Pickett's Pearls. But when you, pickettspearls.net, I'm a little commercial. When you can add creativity to your projects, it even is more energizing. It even helps your mood more. There's something about us. I think it's because we're related to the Creator. We have an innate need to create. And Brene Brown talks about this. She does some great TED Talks, great books. And by the way, everybody I recommend for you guys, I don't believe everything they believe. It's just, but they do have a lot of jewels, you know. But I do agree with her on the creativity thing 100%. She says that all of us, when we're about 8 years old and under, think we're artists. So you can ask a room full of kids, you know, who's an artist? And they're all like, ooh. You know, and then you ask them 4 years later, and only like 20% raise their hand. Because she says at some point they all got discouraged in their creative endeavors, or most of them, or shamed, discouraged, whatever. In my case, as you see, I'm very creative. But in my case, I did not think I was creative until I was like 30. And the reason is because I grew up in a home full of fine artists, and I can't even draw a stick figure, like not at all. And I do know I have to close up, but and so I didn't think I was an artist, or I didn't think I was creative. But creativity is much broader than we think, and all of us are creative, and all of us can be creative. We just need to figure out how. It's just very good for our soul. Anyway, my blog helped me probably take me from like 75% of the way back to 100%. Is probably because it involved so many of the things we talked about. Doing things with your hands, creativity, learning things. It helped me to be more socially connected to people. It helped me with structure. You know, just so ideally you even find something that hits a bunch of those. And Habitat for Humanity, to me, that like hits a lot too. Social connection, doing things with your hands, helping others, probably more. Maybe creativity, I don't know. But something like that. So if you have the energy, try to find something that hits a bunch of those. I'm not going to be able to talk about EMDR, but it is a really cool thing that is very effective helping people work through. It's supposed to help people work through trauma. To me, every day is a trauma. To me, living in this world is traumatic. And so it helps everybody with everything. So I think it's wonderful. So you could look into that. What J.P. Moreland wrote a book called Finding Quiet. He's awesome. He really he's a major professor at Biola. He's written tons of books. He majorly struggled with anxiety and depression and still battles it. He talks about, I highly recommend his book, because he also talks about the heart math solution that my friend thinks is great. But he talks about how EMDR was used in his life. And then he also talks about a book by Dr. Laura Purnell, who trained me in EMDR. It's called Tapping In. And it is how you can do positive EMDR stuff at home. So it's not to process hard things or distressing things. It's to instill peace and calm. And can everybody just do like this, like that right there? and just alternate like that. And then, or you could do like this. And if you do this while you're doing the coming to Jesus exercise, or while you're going to a peaceful place, you don't have to alternate. I'm just saying there's 2 different ways you can do this. It's very effective as far as like solidifying everything. And that's called tapping in, and it's a book. So we don't have time for questions, I don't think. Oh, we have 5 minutes remaining. Does anybody have any questions? No questions. Oh,
I'm a pastor for the church.
uh-huh.
If somebody come and say I'm depressed, give me the 1, 2, 3, what I can do.
I'd say, well, it depends on how depressed they are. If they're suicidal, they need to go to the hospital. They also need to go see a therapist, or professional. But if they're just like super down, I would say exercise and and hobbies, doing things with your hands.
Can I ask you this? Depression is coming from unbalancing your body, it could be, or can be for a situation
Yeah.
they go through?
Yeah, it could be from so many different things, but often it does have a chemical imbalance issue. Which medication helps, but so does music, and more than anything, exercise, and helps balance out your brain and your body. Every time you exercise, it's a shot of dopamine, and it raises your serotonin level.
What role do animals play?
Oh yeah, we didn't mention animals, but they're huge. I don't know what I would have done without my little Winston animal. Yeah, they're huge. I don't know how they're going to regulate. Like they let they just banned miniature horses off the off the airplanes or something. It's like my husband makes a joke like, okay, obviously someone tried to bring their miniature horse on the airplane, and therefore they had to make a rule or whatever. Peacocks aren't allowed on the airplane. But they are huge. Uh-huh. Yeah.
I talk to a lot of people, and one of the big problems with medication is constipation.
Yes.
How does one overcome this when you're given remedies, and those remedies don't really work?
Yes. Well, the medication they often work as far as raising your mood or balancing out your mood, but they can cause side effects like constipation. But if it's like if it's like, are you going to live or not live, or like live or end it or whatever, then medication's a no-brainer, so you have constipation. Magnesium helps, and lots of water. And exercise, there it is again, helps with constipation. And therapy, because it's often related to your stomach, like your emotions.
So I heard the joke about if you want to be more depressed, go on Facebook and see all the fun.
All that comparison, that FOMO, do you think that's real?
Could you speak to the role maybe of social media in a positive sense it would have in terms of community and connection, maybe to the negative?
Yeah, I think it's probably who you're connected to. If you're like connected to people that are like, hey, look at me, my life's perfect. Or then that's probably good. Stay away from those people, and then be with the real people. And it's not been a negative for me, but my daughters do have that little bit of a comparing thing, So I think you should screen like who you have as your friends. I mean, if they make you feel bad about yourself, and if they're making it look like their life's perfect, they're big liars anyway. So.
Sometimes the medication has a black box warning that it could cause depression.
Yeah, I think they just have to cover all bases. Yeah, and sometimes you have to try different things, but yeah. Medication's not ideal, but sometimes it's like, Dr. Lambert, she's not big on medication, Dr. Kelly Lambert at all, but she says medication's like a tow truck. It's like moves you, like if you can't move on your own, it's not ideal to have your car towed around all the time, everywhere you go, whatever. But sometimes it's just like it's essential. So, yeah.
In terms of using your hands, I feel like video games, you use your hands, but
But you're not producing anything like, oh, look at this wreath, or whatever. Oh, look at this gingerbread house. so it's not as the same, I don't think. You might feel better about yourself. I doubt it, but maybe.
Drink Coca-Cola instead of alcohol.
Oh, it's better to drink Coca-Cola instead of alcohol? Oh, okay. Unless you're hypoglycemic like me, and I'm like, yeah, probably, yeah. Alcohol can be a major depressant, yeah.
Can you quickly define or go over EMDR? I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
You know what? We're going to have a panel discussion at the end of the day. Are you going to be around? Will you ask that question? Okay, we have to close up. But yeah, we are going to have a panel discussion at the end of the day. For some reason, they're letting me on that. And so I will answer questions.
Thank you.